So let me introduce our first keynote here, which is Lerke. Lerke is our head of brand, and brand at Frankly is everything from strategy to messaging to architecture, journeys, campaign planning, and so forth. And yeah, Lerke will share a little bit about some of the key problems that we see and how we go about solving them. Welcome, Lerke.
Thank you. Hello. Welcome on top. You climb the stairs, and here we are with our inspirational flares. In a city where ideas take flight, creativity really cannot be shy. We are here to talk brand, tech, creativity, and tech at its peak, and we promise you the perspective you gain will be unique. And though my rhyme is really sublime, continuing like this will take up too much time. So for the next 90 slides, buckle up tight, and we'll give you some ideas that will spark pure delight. Yeah. We're really excited to be here. As you could hear, I rhymed my way through it. That's how excited I am. Not that it's a competition, but I rhymed my way through it. That's how excited I am. There is something about this idea where ideas really do take flight, and where the skyline is a testament to what happens with innovation meets creativity. For us, it's a good scene, because we will always try to push for that extra floor of altitude in your brand story. That little angle to your story you didn't see or believe you could seize. Today I stand in front of you to talk about brand, not as a name, a narrative, or a tagline, but as something far more integrated and powerful. You already heard Nikolai talk about problem-loss creativity. You're gonna hear us repeating it through the day. After all, what is brand if not repeating the same words over and over again? That's kind of how we make it work. But right now I would like to explain how we put it to the test when we show up and deliver for our clients. We are a creative agency, and not creative in the sleek boots, cowboy boots, and weird hat kind of way. At least not only in that kind of way. We are creative in the way we solve problems. You're gonna sense it in our presence, you're gonna see it when we talk throughout the day. And then you consider the client base we have and take into account the very deep and complex B2B structures they live in and the complex landscape that surrounds it. And keep in mind that a lot of our clients stay with us for a long period of times, plus 5 years, some even up to 16 years. Then it will make sense when I'm about to tell you that we immerse ourselves deep into our client's landscape. We bridge bold creativity with concrete initiatives, and we implement what we preach. Let me give you a little taste of how this goes about. Look at this. I'm going to spend some time on this slide, because we have what we call a sentence says navigating at high altitudes. Because when you work with C-suites, you're in the room where high-stake decisions are made. You operate in an environment where clarity is key, but so is calm. Decisions made at the top of an organization cascades down, impacting every single layer on the way. And that's where we step in. A little example of this is at the moment we have 3 brand projects within the same client landscapes related to EV and e-mobility. We are talking about legacy brands that are reaching out around the curve to connect with the opportunities that lies around sustainability, but also the innovative and regulatory impacts that create. 2 weeks ago, we returned after another round of workshop with BASF, Henkel, Siemens, BMW, and CATL. Each of them industry leaders collaborating to deliver the first end-to-end industry solution in an emerging market, as distributors and vendors are faced with increasing regulatory demands and need trusted data to comply. Here, branding is not an afterthought. It is as vital as product development and pricing strategies, implementing brand and positioning it as an essential part of the go-to-market workstream. It was a bit humbling, to be honest, to see how engineers, product owners, and steerco members considered our brand thinking and messaging structures as their equal partner. They're pretty smart people. We landed the brand name. Click. We landed the brand name, a position, a narrative, and a visual identity that gives a defined space for the brand to claim, but also doesn't limit it to only one industry, because that was part of the task. Even though we are launching deep into a world related to e-mobility and digital product passports, what we create needs to stand the test of time. And in the foreseeable future, this story needs to go into agriculture and textiles as well. Presenting creative thoughts at this level always gives me this deep sense of respect for how big brands can pull very skillful people together to work for a common goal. Because it's actually a very tough world out there, and creativity tends to have a fluffy, almost fragile reputation in the landscape we operate in. It's a shame because it can mean that the bold brand angle that will actually set you apart appears to be just out of reach. For us, it's a window of opportunity because we get to bring something to the table that doesn't exist in the room. I think we help brands stay agile and competitive because we ensure that the creative work we do bring to the table is actually robust enough to stand the test of reality. And then to the other part of the headline, because we can't force it, at least not that much. We can repeat it a lot. As you know, it's gonna work eventually, but we actually prefer not to foie gras a brand strategy or 5 new brand values where people and trust are likely 2 of them down people's throats. That's why we say it is actually not a top-down approach. We need to make the stuff we do actually stand without us or the people on top manually holding it up all the time. The brand must resonate internally. As businesses where intangibles words like partnership and reliability can become differentiators, it all comes down to if you can live your claim. This brings me to the next catchy headline. And this one I decided to walk the talk a little bit, because how can I make this a bit more relatable? So I brought another little case. We needed to ensure that the people of Carlsberg got more aware of what they did around ensuring diversity, equity, and inclusivity. Because if the people at Carlsberg weren't aware, if they didn't know that it was happening, Dee and I just got made to 3 small words on a brand-colored background. And our client would just lose out on an agenda they actually can't afford to miss. And sometimes, to make it relatable, you need to add the untouchable to the mix. For Carlsberg, we added the bottle to the mix, the holy grail of like a brand element. And we made it have new forms, new shapes, made it exist in a new reality. Because that way we made it relatable. And we showed them that we mean it when we say that we want you to show up in all shapes and sizes and forms. It's about making them feel connected and invested in the brand. It's essential that they believe in it for the brand promise to come to life. Honestly, without internal buy-in, even the best brand effort will just be external media spend that might resonate in the market, but won't deliver on the daily perceived value. It needs to be relatable to become real. That sounds kind of nice, right? Almost like magic. And I would really love to claim magic as our real superpower. Maybe that would make me understand Fahrenheit so I wouldn't be freezing so much up here. I don't, unfortunately. Honestly, though, I believe it lies in our approach. We approach brand as much more than a name and a set of words. It's about building a holistic brand system that actually integrates into the business. That's also why UX, campaign, strategy, audience building, messaging, and insight sits together as brand and Frankly. We need to consider the full reality around the brand and consider the touch point and what we call moments that matter. It is also why we have messaging hierarchies as a standard component in building brand and pillars. It's a practical tool that makes our creativity robust, bridging the business need to be and prioritize efficiency with creativity's ability to drive differentiation and long-term value. I'm gonna level with you, it does get a little bit complex. And we need to be aligned on purpose and how to define success. We have learned to define what we call a brand presence framework. It helps brands speak with a unified voice across different channels while remaining flexible enough to engage on different audience needs. It's about not pinning brand and performance against each other by making them push together towards one brand goal. Otherwise, your brand will end up being stuck on a paper and your performance will end up being stuck in a channel. We need them to work together. They are not opposing sides here. Basically, we don't build brands to only look good on paper. We ensure it performs in the real world and with measurable business results. So when we talk about a successful e-learning implementation for Henkel, we don't let the story stand around e-learning alone. We tie it into packaging of a brand differentiator called expertise. Because that way it's about bringing that to the market. And the result we create through e-learning is tied to something very concrete and related to the business. Because making your success stand on paper is really great. But we kind of like it when it stands in context to the business objectives as well. When I wrote this headline, I kind of expected our head of design to tackle me away from the keyboard. He's like 2 meters, which is like 100 feet tall. He's from the rural part of Denmark, essentially 1,000 years and an axe away from being a Viking. But I stand and live to tell the tale. There is some truth in this headline. That's one thing. The other argument is that we are kind of differentiating ourselves as well with these bold statements that doesn't only push our clients, but also us as their creative partner. We believe that the most challenging problem often presents the greatest opportunity for creative solutions. And that is where our team shines. Because we do deliver creativity that is not only inspiring, but also practical and grounded in reality. In a corporate world, creative solutions need to be robust. See, repetition, repetition. It needs to account for complex market forces, competitive pressures, and internal organizational dynamics. Brand makes our creativity fit for a corporate world. The critical understanding we have means that we can blend imagination with insights and execution. It is easy to get caught up in the aesthetics of branding. The visuals, the slogans, the tone of voice, the tangibles we can see, touch, and have an opinion about. But we focus on making sure that every single decision we make serves a strategic purpose, or at least brings us just a little bit closer on where we want to be. Because at the end of the day, we do want our solution to look good, but we also want them to drive real and tangible results. That was a lot about brand from Frankly's perspective. We actually also consider market tendencies. One of the most significant ones we work with is the increasing role of technology in shaping brand touchpoints. Let's be honest, day-to-day life of a brand is very much carried by the consumer experiences. That's also why we breach a lot with our own tech capabilities. You're going to hear from Chris, our CTO and partner, very shortly. And these people are very often our first qualifier when we consider a new brand engagement, when we consider to build a new hook out in the market for an audience we didn't quite catch. Because assessing the implementation of it, as well as the journey, is an essential part in our process. We simply need to consider how people interact with the brands in the digital space. And we need to keep this close in our work as well, when we shape the brand, but also consider the position we want it to claim. And then we need to accept that the role of technology means that things will never really be fixed. So we optimize following a brand launch. We assess if we have the right touch points, if we are missing some moments, and then we can take them into the next round, make it just a bit better. If any of you were to do brand lingo today, I'm pretty sure the value base would be on top of that card. It is in growing demand. Not much of a news there. We have seen this happen over the last couple of years. Also in the B2B space, people look for brands to be more than just price and product. The long-term value lies in defending your premium price. You can do that if you go high on your intangibles. And stay there as you make them stand for something concrete. No doubt that consumers, B2B and B2C alike, are looking for brands to align with their values and contribute to society in meaningful ways. But as you guys all do this, it is more a fundamental expectation of brands today than an actual differentiator. For us, it comes down to if you can own your values, because isolated, a value really don't differentiate you. Let me bring you back a little bit to Düsseldorf again. The example I brought up earlier, where we work with BMW, Siemens, Henkel, BASF, and CATL. Here we have brands that are really big on words like trust and transparency. But we also have one brand that represents a very crucial part of the value chain and also the market, where these words, they don't travel very well. It's not that they're bad words, they just don't connect to the audience, and they don't connect to the business either. They can't own them. We solved it like this. We made trust be the enabler of something more relatable for the brands, reliability. Because that balance was essentially the true story and all brands across the board. Again, how do we make this stand in a way that actually resonates with deeper audience desires, making the brand not only inspirational but also practical, not only aspirational but also reliable? Taking the very transactional element a little bit out and letting the human voice shine a little bit through. The last tendency I'm going to highlight today is one we experience not only when pushing brands in regards to position and leads, but especially in regards to employer branding. It's the growing demand for personalized experiences. People want brands to understand them, their unique needs, and they actually expect them to deliver experiences that match. This became very clear for McKinsey as they needed a new EVP, employee value proposition, to break the myth about being only for the Ivy League schools. Or when Novo Nordisk needed to recruit digital talents and found themselves not leading the race against digital startups. On the topic of recruitment, in this regard, providing a clear employee value proposition rose to the top after COVID. And honestly, it has since become the new benchmark. Again, as a brand, you can't afford to lose out for that long before you get left behind. Though from very different worlds, both brands came with very similar symptoms. The desired audience were kept just a bit out of reach because of their brand's very confined and nice way of communicating, took a bit over the story. Basically, we need to flip it a bit. So we brought the personal stories back as part of the message. For an EVP to come to life, we need to step a little bit away from the front of the story as a brand. The brand needs to show enough confidence to not make it be about themselves, but rather stand as the strong enabler of personal growth and career aspirations. We need to build a language that talks about people, for people, and with a human voice rather than a brand-dominated language. As I'm about to bring a lot of this together, you're gonna get a little visual breather in like 2 seconds. We see branding as more than just an external badge. It's an internal belief system, a creative engine, and a business driver all at once. We work with brands as we build systems that are flexible enough to adapt to shifting market dynamics, yet strong enough to maintain consistency across all touchpoints. In a world where complexity is the norm, creativity is the competitive advantage that sets us apart. And our ability to implement it in a way that never overextends the brand is how we enable our clients to thrive. We stand here on the back of Climate Week, where sustainability has moved from being a headline to a license to operate, and now stands in front of us, not with a why, but with a crucial how. It's a difficult needle to thread. Serving industry-leading brands, we get the struggle, we live the struggle with you guys. What we've learned is that the real advantage of industries leaders comes from being transparent and authentic about the challenges. That honesty is what sets brands apart, making them trusted partners and leaders in driving sustainable growth. If you are to remember anything from these 15 minutes of me talking a lot and some pretty headlines, I hope it's going to be these 3 things. Are you as bold as you could be? Does your brand look only good on paper? And are you missing out on some agendas out there?
Thank you, Lerke, for an enlightening session. You know it, whenever you start deep diving into brand, you spark conversation. So let's do that. I'm equipped with the microphone, and let's open up for questions.
So if there's anybody who has a burning question for, okay, there's quite a few down there. Okay, let's go there straight away. Yeah.
Right in the middle.
And please, state your name and where you're from.
My name's Alex Jana. I'm OrderSpark's founder. Great presentation. I loved your design. But I'm really curious about brands have to live in an omni-channel approach. We have TikTok, LinkedIn, whatever X is called, Twitter. Consumers are really repackaging video, and they're all over the place. Brand consistency is really hard. How do you believe in the ever-changing landscape of tech, brands are going to live in an omni-channel environment?
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I see it split a bit in 2. One thing is the amount of control you desire to have around your brand and how you enable user-generated content to be a natural part of how you tell the story. That's the brand visual side of it. Another part is if you should embrace all challenge at all costs. The latter part I'm going to start with a bit with. I don't think you should be on all channels. I think you should be on the channels where you build the strongest presence. Because every single time you launch a new channel, you commit to something. So make sure it represents the audience you want to meet, where you want to meet them. We have this thing we call moments that matter. It's a UX term about, instead of going very wide, zoom in, identify your audience structure, identify where you have the biggest moment to give the biggest value. That's your moment that matter. If that moment exists best on a TikTok, you form a presence around that about a specific audience. But if it doesn't, TikTok shouldn't be the platform for you. You can catch that attention elsewhere. To the second point you had about how you operate in a landscape where a lot of stuff is user-generated, a lot of it is about repackaging content, you have to let go of some of your control. That's the reality of a brand. A lot of the stuff we are working with is trying to define a very heavy layer, as we call it, on top, where we have a lot of control. It's what we call our hero. It's where we establish the language. We don't want to let go of any control there. We control the channels as we push it out and the formats we use and where we place it. So we also own placements more. In the middle layer, we wanted to roll it out more. We want to actually articulate the human voice. Maybe you're going to get the microphone to an influencer. Maybe you're going to invite internal voices to take the stage. You're letting go a little bit, but you still have the production. If you have form on these 2 layers, you can let go of the 10%. Because that's okay. User-generated content is good, but it needs to build on a brand language you can own.
Of course.
Would you like to?
Right. No, a couple of more questions there. Both next to you.
So, hi, my name is Nancy Hull. I'm an independent consultant, and I'm also doing market entry as well. So your portfolio is very impressive, but it's extremely regionalized, right? And so you're here in the New York market. How are you dealing with those challenges and talking about the market here and different kind of client expectations, et cetera, because those are very Nordic and European-centric types of brands, whereas here it's going to be a completely different voice, a completely different ICP, etc. So how would you deal with that challenge, especially getting a new client into your portfolio?
Oh, you mean from Franklin's perspective?
Yes,
Yeah.
correct, yes.
I mean, I think for us, the way we've experienced is that the creativity we bring actually works relatively well in the US landscape. You're right in the sense that the brands we brought with you today are European-based, but you can also see a lot of global brands in there. McKinsey, we run out of New York, for instance. Henkel's also here today, also run out of the US. So I think that we have some general tendencies that work in our favor, actually. One thing is that we have a different approach to talking communication, for instance. We talk from value-based point of view, but we don't see that in opposition to performance-based marketing. That's another thing, because that's actually what we see a lot happening, not only in the States, but generally, is that performance-based marketing is taking more and more over from the brand-based value propositions you have out there. We don't necessarily see them as opposing sides. So that's a lot of the new voice we bring to the table, and it actually resonates relatively well. And committing to that can trickle down, whether that's then a B2C brand that's entering into a new market, or whether it's B2B in the same complex structures we know. Committing to it, to not having these two guys as opposing sides, but being part of how we build a brand language is something we can carry across, I think.
All right. I think
There
we
was
have a
another
question
question. Oh, sorry. Maybe I.
So I'm Mike. So I worked a little bit over here in Wall Street, and the companies you showed, they're like top companies in Europe, like the same companies in here that build the Chrysler building. How did you do that? Is my question. And I don't want to compete with you. Like, just tell me, how did you do that?
I think if you're talking about the consortium brands, I think the honest story was that we were very honest with them initially about how we need to run the process. We were supposed to land a brand with, I'm gonna be honest, it's not 5 brands that don't have opinions about brands. So we knew we had to have we level set initially very early on how we run this process. And then we looked them in the eye across the table and being like, this is gonna hurt a little bit on everybody involved, but needs to hurt equally. Okay, we can't have one guy that's hurting a lot and the other ones are really on top. And that also included us. So we throw us a lot of ourselves in the mix when we go about it. So we are there with our clients at the table. We fight the battle with them and for them. So that's how we want it.
I think we have time for one more question.
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon. Fantastic presentation. Thank you. My name is Tristan Zhang. I'm with Cosmos British Capital multifamily office. And so my question is regarding, you mentioned that you guys are about a 75-person headcount company. And so we all know that with respect to branding, if you impact it properly in a very significant way, you can really drive up the valuation for a company, and of course the loyalty of the customers that associate with the company, and which is extremely important. So with a smaller headcount, how do you compete with these larger branding firms out there, and there are so many of them, to get the maximum influence possible?
I mean, we don't go head to head with them on headcount, first of all. So that's the question. We don't try to beat them at their game. we beat them at ours. So I think what we bring to the table is that we have hands-on people and we have senior voices in there, and then they get time with them. What happens when I was sitting client side. So let me give that real example of buying into 5 people from a huge global agency brand and then never meeting them again. I think that's also part of it. So I don't mean. You have to ask our clients, actually. Henkel, why did we beat the other guys? Yeah, I don't know. I think there's truth in it. Like we've found out that we have 3 very strong things going for us. We bring a lot of energy into every single meeting. Storm is going to touch upon that. Yes, Storm. We have a high trust among the table when we sit across from clients, and that trust is relatively early established. And then we bring a unique perspective. I think that's kind of how we win.
Thank you, Lerke. Thank you so much. You're off the hook.